Our first presentation to kick off the summit is Real Hope When Confronted with Dementia. Our speakers are Pastor Kurt Seefeldt, Lori LeBay, and our special guest is Jan Zimmerman, a registered nurse and one of the administrators at our Heritage Homes in Watertown. Pastor Seefeldt serves as one of the resource development counselors for the Lutheran Home Association. He began serving the residents and tenants of the Lutheran Home back in 2010 when he worked with the Lutheran Home campus in River Falls. Pastor Seefeldt has been involved in the ministry of the Wisconsin Synod in a number of different ways. He's served in congregations in Kansas, South Dakota, and Minnesota. He chaired the Dakota-Montana District Board for Parish Services, the Huron, South Dakota Advocacy Program, Minnesota District Lutheran Institutional Ministries, and Pastor Seefeldt is a firm believer that Christian ministry is about sharing the message of Jesus and his love. We're really excited to have Lori LeBay with us at this summit. Lori is the founder of Alzheimer Speaks, is a passionate advocate who searches for ways to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort. She's been recognized both by ShareCare and Dr. Oz as the #1 online influencer for Alzheimer's. Lori is one of those people who really gets it when it comes to the whole subject of dealing with Alzheimer's. As host of Alzheimer Speaks radio and the webinar series Dementia Chats, Lori connects people to best practices and facilitates conversations on Alzheimer's. Would you first of all welcome Pastor Kurt Seefeldt?
Thank you, Pastor Gartner. This morning, about 9 o'clock, my mood changed. I wasn't sure why at first. And then I noticed it. I looked out the window, and I don't know about where you were, but at 9 o'clock, it started to get light. And so the first time in how many days I saw the sun, I looked down on the floor. There was actually a sunbeam coming through my window and actually left an image on the floor. And I said, I haven't seen that in a while. My mood changed because a hope was fulfilled. I heard the weather forecast last night from the weather people, and they said there's a chance of sun today, and so I hoped it would happen. We're here to talk about hope today. And as we talk about hope, it's sort of a fragile thing, isn't it? The way we use the word. When we think about hope, we like things to be some way, and that something that we'd like to happen is, we believe, is better. And of course, we don't get our hopes too high, do we? Because if we do, what happens? Sometimes we're disappointed. And so when Christian pastors use the word hope, we're always stuck with a little bit of a problem. Because the way you and I use it in everyday speech, it's sort of like I said, a fragile word. And when the Bible talks about hope, it's never a fragile thing. And that's why a lot of pastors get into the practice of talking about a sure hope or a certain hope, or sometimes we say a sure and certain hope, just to make sure people understand. Because that's what you and I want, and that's what Scripture gives us, and we find. Today we're going to talk about real hope. And again, we use that modifier to help us understand that the hope we're talking about is solid, is sure, and is something that God provides to us, first of all, and that we, by the grace of God, can provide to other people. Our hope is with Jesus. And when we talk about Jesus, we want to go straight to the Scriptures. This is a passage from Romans chapter 8, the end of the chapter. And St. Paul tells us, what then can we say in response to these things? What are the things he's talking about? If you go back to verse 18, he talks about the present sufferings. And if you go down to verse 20, he talks about decay, and with it, the frustration that we have as we deal with decay. He says, well, how are we going to deal with these things? That's our experience, isn't it? That we deal with a life that's full of decay and frustration, and sometimes we as people might wonder, does God really care? Let's remember what frustration is all about. Frustration happens when you and I expect something to be different and it isn't. For instance, if we are expecting our child and people ask, well, are you expecting a boy or a girl? What would you like? We might say, we like healthy. That's what we want. Makes no difference whether it's a boy or a girl. That's our hope and expectation. When we give our teenager the keys right after they get their driver's license, we have a hope, don't we? We hope that there is no accident, that there's safety. Or if there is an accident, it's only the car, and there's no injuries. Or we hope as we get near retirement that we can enjoy those golden years. Take more time with our family, with the grandkids, do some traveling, do the things that we've been putting off for sometimes decades. And sometimes we get frustrated, don't we? We get frustrated because the child is born with an intellectual disability. Or our teenager, or the teenager of a friend, gets involved in a horrible accident that leaves a lifelong scars, trauma, physical or intellectual disabilities. Or there's dementia. Whether it's from a stroke or whether it's Alzheimer's, it's not what we had in mind. And so we say, is God really for us? And our God says yes. St. Paul says, remember, he who did not spare his own son. Does God love us? The answer is, look at Jesus. Look at the Father making a conscious decision to send his Son to undo the damage that happened because of sin, to pay for our sins, to atone for our sins. That is the proof of God's love. That's the source of real hope. And so he goes on to say, what does this mean? If you look at the bottom, the last paragraph there. Who's going to bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It's God who justifies. Who is he then that condemns? It's no one. But what does this mean out of Jesus dying and rising again? Is that there is no more condemnation for human beings on this earth. Which is, again, very important for us to remember when we get frustrated by the way life is. We sometimes wonder, is this a punishment from God? And the answer right here is no. It can't be. If the punishment is on Jesus, there's no punishment left for us. If our sins are forgiven, there's no more punishment for sins. And that's why we can talk about real and solid hope in Jesus Christ. More than that, Paul says he died, but he was raised. And what's Jesus doing right now? He's interceding for us. He's not sitting back there. He could be on a recliner with his feet up. No. He is actively, we are told, reminding anybody who happens to be listening, I paid for everybody's sins. So he's involved in our lives. That's love. And even if we face dementia or trauma or intellectual disabilities, no matter what it is, nothing can separate us from that love. Trouble, hardship, persecution, famine, nakedness, danger, the sword. St. Paul says, no, in all of these things we're more than conquerors. We're, how do you translate that? Winners over the top of winners is what he's saying. And that's guaranteed. That is the reason we have a hope. So St. Paul concludes, I'm convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels or demons, neither present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, or anything in all of creation is able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. And keep remember, this is the victory speech that he's making, but he's making it before he's won the victory. He's still talking about our present sufferings. He's still talking about our decay that we see around us and the frustrations we have as human beings. And yet, we're confident we're going to get through this. So our first point is that nothing, even dementia, can separate us from God's love. That's our hope that we have in Jesus. And we want to keep this in front of us. Why? Because God didn't spare his Son. He's going to be with us and give us all things and be with us for the duration. So when God gave his Son Jesus as a sacrifice for our sins, that is the ultimate proof that he loves us. He's going to get us through things. This is from St. Paul's second letter to Timothy. He talks about the Lord's going to rescue me from every evil attack and is going to bring me safely to his heavenly kingdom. To him be glory forever and ever. I want to talk a little bit about dementia. It really wasn't our plan if we have dementia in our family, is it? I'm going to compare it, first of all, to something that happened to me the end of January. I was traveling back from a preaching engagement, and I set out in a snowstorm thinking I was going to, as I got closer to Belle Plaine, I was going to be driving out of it. About halfway through, I listened to the radio, and they said there was a blizzard warning for Mankato, which meant I'm not driving out of it, I'm driving into it. By that time, I had pretty much committed myself to going home. And I was on a familiar stretch of highway, and I knew that pretty soon, somewhere ahead of me, the road was going to divide. 2-lane highway was going to become a 4-lane highway to get around an intersection. And I was looking for it, but I didn't realize quite quickly enough that I was on it. And all of a sudden I saw the track that I was following start to go to this way, and then I had the track this way, and I started going the wrong way. And I knew that I couldn't go down that road because I could hit somebody head on. And so I jerked it to get it into the right track. And you know what happened? I started to skid. And I felt, okay, just stay with it. We'll get out of it. I skidded some more. And I said, I may not get out of this one. I'm going to see if I can make sure I don't hit a sign or hit a guardrail if I do hit the ditch. And then I began to feather the accelerator a little bit, and I said, okay, I'm getting this back under control. And I reached a point where I said, this is going to work. And God answered my prayers and got me through it. And I want to compare that to dementia. Like a person with dementia, when it attacks your family, it's not what you wanted. I didn't want to skid. But once I found myself in the skid, I had to make adjustments. Instead of holding the accelerator steady and keeping the wheel straight, I needed to turn back and forth. And I discovered as I got into the skid, I was actually beginning to control it. I could feel like I was getting under control. I learned how to deal with the situation. And that's the one thing that we want to also learn too with dementia. Nobody wishes for dementia, but it does affect us. Whether it's a loved one that has it and we become the primary caregiver, or it's a friend or family member, and we are going to be both helping the person with dementia and supporting the caregiver, we've got to make adjustments. But we can also make those adjustments. We can learn. And so as we take a look at this, we understand that God's promise is going to help us through life's challenges, including dementia, bringing us safely to heaven, and that is our confidence. I want to go back to this particular slide too. It's the vision of the Lutheran Home Association. And with that vision, we always want to remind ourselves the purpose of our organization. And the first is to share eternal hope. Now, this is why we have chaplains at all of our locations. This is why we do Jesus Cares Ministries and all the other ministries that we do. It is to bring that to people. The other thing that we want to do is provide hope. And there we particularly focus on the physical and the mental and the emotional side of a person. As we do that with our residences and those programs. And then to inspire hope. And particularly as we look to get out to congregations and get out to communities and let people know, hey, you are not alone. We can help. We can learn. And so we're going to understand or try to help people by truly understanding what is going on with dementia. And we're going to play a video here that in 3 minutes can help you understand what's going on, especially with Alzheimer's, better than I can explain it in 20.
What is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's is a slow, fatal disease of the brain affecting 1 in 10 people over the age of 65. No one is immune. The disease comes on gradually as 2 abnormal protein fragments called plaques and tangles accumulate in the brain and kill brain cells. They start here in the hippocampus, the part of the brain where memories are first formed. Over many years' time, the plaques and tangles slowly destroy the hippocampus, and it becomes harder and harder to form new memories. Simple recollections from a few hours or days ago that the rest of us might take for granted are just not there. After that, more plaques and tangles spread into different regions of the brain, killing cells and compromising function wherever they go. This spreading around is what causes the different stages of Alzheimer's. From the hippocampus, the disease spreads here to the region of the brain where language is processed. When that happens, it gets tougher and tougher to find the right word. Next, the disease creeps toward the front of the brain, where logical thought takes place. Very gradually, a person begins to lose the ability to solve problems, grasp concepts, and make plans. Next, the plaques and tangles invade the part of the brain where emotions are regulated. When this happens, the patient gradually loses control over moods and feelings. After that, the disease moves to where the brain makes sense of things it sees, hears, and smells. In this stage, Alzheimer's wreaks havoc on a person's senses and can spark hallucinations. Eventually, the plaques and tangles erase a person's oldest and most precious memories, which are stored here in the back of the brain. Near the end, the disease compromises a person's balance and coordination, and in the very last stage, it destroys the part of the brain that regulates breathing and the heart. The progression from mild forgetting to death is slow and steady, and takes place over an average of 8 to 10 years. It is relentless and, for now, incurable. Helping your family, friends, and neighbors to better understand Alzheimer's will reduce stigma, improve care, and even help the fight for a cure. Thanks for helping to do your part. Learn more at www.aboutalz.org.
The reason we use this video is just to help people understand what is going on. Lutheran Home has given me the ability to go to different congregations especially and present a 3-hour PowerPoint presentation talking about various aspects of the disease, and it's all about education. It's about education for primary caregivers. It's about education for people who might support them, and you are either one or the other. If you would like, there is a copy of this DVD on our resource table back over there next to that door, and these are free for you to take. And that's what we would like to do is not only focus on the hope that we have in Jesus, but also hope that we can find in one another through resources. One of the blessings of having, if I could call it a blessing, of having disease that lots of people have is that there's a lot of people out there who can provide help. And one of the things we talk about with resources are the support groups. Lori LeBay in a couple of minutes is going to talk about the memory cafes. We'll have a chance to look at that. Even before they've started to come here in the United States, there are Alzheimer's support groups all over the country. And in Belle Plaine, one of our individuals, Sarah Beckius, has been doing an Alzheimer's support group on the Belle Plaine campus since the year 2000. These meet usually weekly or either monthly. I think some of these others might meet weekly, and you can find one in your area simply by going to the Alzheimer's Association webpage. To help you, facilitate you finding those things, there is again on the back table a yellow sheet. There's a number of resources that you can access, as well as a couple of books that I sometimes refer to in my presentations. Also on the back table is I call it Make a Better Day ideas. And by using those, it gives you a tool to come into visiting someone with dementia, because one of the problems that we find with people with dementia, if we go and visit them like we usually do, start asking them questions, they often get to a point where that doesn't work anymore. So if we can be prepared to come in with a bit of a monologue, a conversation about something that I know happened to this person with dementia, my loved one, I can sometimes find a way to connect to them. Or sometimes I can come and sing songs. Or then these are full of ideas of projects that you can do with folks with dementia. We also have the booklet that is in your folder. We have put out a number of copies of those, and they are available. And if you would like extra copies, we could again make them available at the back table. And then, as I already mentioned, the Make a Better Day ideas. The purpose of all of these skills is that we can learn to become a person to reach even with people with advanced dementia. And I'm really going to close today with a video that I use in my presentations that kind of pulls it all together and actually demonstrates how an individual who has learned to work with folks with dementia can really reach out to them and connect.
When people are very old and deteriorated and no one enters their world and they're just sitting there, they will withdraw inward more and more. And their desperate need for connection is all now inside. And if a person is all alone, even if they're very, very deteriorated, there's a longing for this kind of closeness. Mrs. Wilson? Hello. You want me to sit? Can you see me good? Gladys Wilson is a wonderful example of a person who is in the phase of repetitive motion, where people use movements, repetitive movements, because they don't have any more speech or very little speech, but they have human needs that need to be expressed. You're crying. You're crying. You have a tear right here in your face. You have a little pain. You want me to touch you. You're very sad. Can you see me? Is it scary? Are you afraid? And if this person sits with their eyes closed, rocking back and forth, and maybe there's a tear coming down, there's a need there. Here. There's a little tear that's coming out. Do you feel it? You feel a little tear? If you gently use touch, and I touched Gladys Wilson for the fingertips right here on the cheek, is where the mother usually touches a child. If you touch an infant there, it looks up. And every cell remembers where it was touched by the mother. And often that person knows, even if they can't say a word at that moment, they won't talk, or they don't want to talk, but there's a communication. And that person is no longer alone. Can you let me in a little bit? You think? Just a little? You think I could be with you and Jesus for a minute? Jesus loves me, yes I know, for the Bible tells me so. I used music, because when speech is gone, music, especially with Gladys Wilson, it was religious music, because there's emotion tied to it and safety tied to it. So I used her old church songs. Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. What I did was, when she moved, I moved with her. And when I was singing, because she didn't sing with me, so I matched the intensity of my voice to the intensity of her movement. And pretty soon, for a split second, we became one person. Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. So at one point, when she got very quiet and very peaceful, and my voice became very quiet as hers and very peaceful, and my breathing slowed to her breathing, she pulled me to her, and I moved with her. And for her, at that moment, I believe I was a symbol of her mom. Can you open your eyes now? Do you see me? Feel safe and warm? Yes? Can you sing with me? He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got the mothers and the fathers. He's got the mothers and the fathers in his hands. He's got the mothers and the fathers in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. The breakthrough doesn't happen every time. The person will not always open their eyes and look at you. But if you keep trying and you keep centering yourself and really look at that person and really mirror their movements, maybe not this time, but the next time you come, you'll have a communication. You feel safe. You feel safe? Yeah. With Jesus? Yeah. And me?
I use this video with special permission from Memory Bridge. The DVD is also on the resource table, and you can find a way to pick that up online if you would like to. And I'm grateful for them allowing me to use it. It is copyright material. It's from a program that actually appeared on PBS. I like the DVD because it really demonstrates both points, doesn't it? It shows the hope that Gladys found with Jesus, and with a skill that Naomi uses to bring that out and remind that, it helps us understand the importance of understanding how dementia works and how to respond with love and with skill. I thank you. We'd now like to turn it over to Lori.
Well, hello, everyone. I Are we getting a little echo here? I don't know if you can turn yours off maybe. That might help. I'm really excited to be here, very, very much so. I have been living with dementia for 30 years with my mom's disease. And are we getting an echo or is it just me that's hearing it? You guys are okay? Okay. Just want to make sure. First, I want to talk a little bit about dementia. The video was great, but a lot of times people struggle between dementia and Alzheimer's and what's the difference. And so I like to put it like this. Alzheimer's disease is one type of dementia. And dementia is like a cold. You might have a sore throat, you might have the sniffles, you might have a cough. Those are all different types of symptoms, but we still say it's a cold. And so that's kind of a big bucket picture in terms of looking at the difference of the two. How many people in the room have ever forgotten something? Okay, so this is a common thing. But one of the things that people say, I talk with people with dementia all the time, and one of the things that they say is really different for them, because they get frustrated with us when we say, oh, I forget my keys too. They say, it's not like that. It's not like that. And you need to listen to me when I tell you I'm having some issues. And this is what it's like for them. They can peek out the window trying to figure out what to wear for the day, to see if it's sunny or snowing, and they'll turn around and not be sure if they should put on their flip-flops or their boots. They can go into a room in their house they've been living in for over 20 years and not know how to get out of that room and be looking directly at the door. And they can hear their spouse saying, come on out to the kitchen. So you see, dementia is much more than just forgetting your keys. And when someone is talking to us about this, we have to pay attention. We have to validate them in terms of what is going on. Because you could be the next to forget, or you could be the next to be forgotten. And that's not a place any of us want to be. Someone in the world gets diagnosed every 4 seconds. Tick, 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 tick. Who is next? This disease knows no boundaries. It doesn't matter how old you are. People as young as in their 20s are getting diagnosed. It's not as common, but more and more people are getting diagnosed in their 60s, 50s, and 40s. And many will say they struggle to get diagnosed because people think it's an old person's disease. It is not. And we have to change our behaviors. You see, our world has gotten off kilter. We don't know up from down. We don't know what is reality. And so I want to pose this question to you. What's the common link between dementia, the flu epidemic, the fiscal cliff, and mass shootings? Anybody have any ideas? Could happen to anyone. What else? You don't know when it's going to happen. To me, it's about our care culture. And what I mean by that is with dementia, we know when someone gets ill, a lot of times we have to physically help take care of them. The flu epidemic, people go, what are you talking about, Laura? But how many times have you not washed your hands when you should? How many times have you gone into work or gone to a gathering when you were sick, knowing you could spread the disease, but you chose not to care about how you impacted others? The fiscal cliff is pretty evident because we can't come to agreement. And we look at mass shootings. Mass shootings are people saying, "You are not caring for me well. Pay attention. I need your help." We need to reframe. We need to come together. We have to become more compassionate. It's our care culture. Where did it go? How do we get it back? It's a shift we must take. And when it comes to dementia, it's a shift to remove the fears and remove the stigmas so that those dealing with this disease, not just the people diagnosed, but their family and their friends and their co-workers and the businesses they go to are all dealing with this. We have to shift our attitude because this disease is not a disease of one. It's a disease of society, and it must be treated differently because people are out there just hanging on for the ride of their life. They don't know where it's going to take them or what's going to happen next. There is no rule book. There is no rhyme or reason. The video said people can live a fairly short time with this disease. My mom lived 30 years. She started having memory problems at my age in her mid-50s. She lived to 86. This is much more common, and we're going to hear more about this as people get diagnosed earlier. We have to help them. We have to shift the way we view caregiving differently. We have to get out of this state of crisis and realize we can bring people comfort. But the only way we're going to do that is to understand that how we care is a natural state. It's something we do multiple times throughout our day. It is something, it is something that starts upon conception. And people ask me all the time, "Oh, come on, Lori, how can a baby in a womb care?" But how many tummies have you talked to and how many bellies have you patted? Once you know there's a baby in the womb, there's a relationship. You're picking names, you're thinking about colors. Are they gonna do sports? Who are they gonna take after? Who are they gonna look like? And that relationship never goes away. So why do we think it goes away when someone has dementia? Why do we do this? Why are we so scared? People actually think they can get this disease, that it's catchy like the flu. It's not. They don't know how they got it. The researchers don't even know how we get it. All we know is every single person in here is susceptible. And we don't know who's going to be next. So we have to change how we deal with it. I'm going to share with you a story called Betty the Bald Chicken. It woke me up at 2 in the morning. That's kind of when I get these things. And all I could see was Betty the Bald Chicken, and I kept hearing Alzheimer's, Betty the Bald Chicken, Alzheimer's. And I know enough that if I don't get up and kind of write a story down, I'm not getting any sleep. And what came to me was so profound, yet so beautiful and simple in terms of the choices we have. So I'd like to share that story with you, and that'll explain the chickens on my back table back there that everyone's always asking me about. You see, Betty lived on this farm, and she got along great with everybody. And one day she was just outside nibbling on her corn and eating dinner, and she felt this tug and this pull. And she looked around and she couldn't figure out what had happened, because nobody was standing by her. But she'd swear someone just tugged at her. And when she looked back down at the ground again, she saw one lone feather had fallen. And she knew it was hers. But she decided not to tell anybody about this feather that had fallen, because what would she tell them? She didn't really know what it meant, but she did have that gut feeling that life was never, ever going to be the same, and something was changing, but she didn't know what. And about 3 months later, Betty was out on the farm again, eating dinner, and this time she felt a tug and a pull, except this time she squawked out in pain. Whoops. What happened? I'm so sorry. I'm used to my own clicker here. She squawked out in pain, and several feathers had fallen. And she noticed everybody pulling back from her. And she saw the fear in their eyes. And she felt so ashamed. And when she looked at her body, she saw red pocked marks, and she saw she had lost so many feathers, and she had no idea what was happening. All she knew is that everybody was backing away from her, and they were scared. And so over the next couple of months, Betty felt really isolated, and she was no longer invited to the events. Her friends and family had a hard time even giving her eye contact. And so one day she decided to wander the outskirts of the farm. And she was crying and she was praying, please, please help me. And she tripped. And as she tripped, she tumbled off a cliff into this big ravine. And she prayed to God, please be with me. Please. And she really thought this was the end. But what Betty didn't know was at the bottom of the ravine was a whole nother community, ready, willing, and able to embrace her. And they heard her cries and her screams as she tumbled down the ravine. And they came out and they saved her. And not once did they ask her, where did your feathers go? What is wrong with you? They just said, we're here to help. We want you to be part of our community. You see, people have a choice. They can pity somebody, or they can push somebody away that has dementia, or they can choose to continue to celebrate life. Who are you? And more so, who do you want to be today and tomorrow? Because every single moment you have a chance to change. Who do you want to be? Some of you may have been Betty in one situation or another and know the pain of isolation. The choice is ours. Because people are dying in the river of denial. On this journey, they are pushed in. And sometimes they just jump in and say, I'm not ready to deal with what is going on. And sometimes they're strong enough to swim to shore and pull themselves out. Other times their eyes are searching for years for someone to throw them a rope and say, I'm here for you. Let me pull you ashore. And other times, They just need to tread water and go under a few times and feel the amount of pain that can come with this disease before they're ready to deal with more. This is why it's important to become dementia friendly. So many people are dealing with this disease, and the ripple effect is huge. When memory problems occur, most of you raised your hand, you forget something, what do? What is your self-talk? Typically, the older we get, the more critical we are. In our 20s, we're just like, woohoo, no big deal. In our 60s, 50s and 60s, we start really kind of analyzing that. And if you've ever had anyone in your family with this disease, you really start to ponder it. And in your 70s and 80s, the self-talk can be horrific. So where does your mind go? For most people, if they're on the computer, if they weren't scared before, they will be once they go to Google and Bing. And they'll research and they'll get all kinds of information, but there aren't answers. There is no cure. So what do we do with that? Many people start saying goodbye because it's too painful. This disease is like a death for many who don't know how to handle it, so they'd rather say goodbye because it's so uncomfortable not knowing what to do. You see, so much of the time we use fear in society to raise funds. This is my mom and that kind of shell of a body look. I can't tell you how many times people gave me permission to never go see her again. They would ask me one question. Does she know who you are? Does she know your name? People ask that for two reasons. Some people really cared how she was doing, and others wanted to give me permission to never go back because they didn't know how to support me, let alone her. And I'm telling you today, that shell of a body always, always, always has a spark in it. But we have to look for different things. We have to look for the glint in the eye, the giggle, the dimples, the smiles. It's the simplicity that is so beautiful in this disease. We have to start building a living memorial. Now you can look up here and go, boy, that woman's got a lot of bad hair days. But it wasn't important at a certain point. She's got this smile and a glint in her eyes that will light up a room. This is a woman who is known all over the world because she helped me share her journey. So I'd just like to see a raise of hands. How many people have been touched by dementia? Family member, friend? Just about everybody. So it's time. It's time to come together. Look at the numbers here. They're significant. 88,000 people just in Minnesota. It's time to become dementia aware. And dementia aware is not about having all the answers. It's about creating supportive environments. It's about embracing safety and simplicity. It's about making new rules. It's about finding new ways. And we can build unity through community if we just start having simple conversations. We can move people from crisis to comfort by our eye contact, by a hug, by holding someone's hand. It's not about having all the answers. These people here are all part of Dementia Chats, which is something that I do as a webinar twice a month, and it's free to the public. And each one of these people have dementia. Harry, up in the upper, let's see, it'd be left-hand corner there, lives in Pennsylvania, and he started a Facebook group called Forget-Me-Nots. And he's got almost a couple thousand people around the world chatting and talking. Dina lives out in Washington. Michael in the middle lives out in Pennsylvania. And Steve just moved to Wisconsin because his wife divorced him because he's got dementia. They are filled with wonderful insights. We need to start drawing that out. Instead of talking about people with dementia, we need to talk with them. Norm McNamara is doing brilliant things. He's over in the UK. He has started the Purple Angel movement. He has started the dementia-friendly communities. The Prime Minister is behind him. They have the Purple Angel symbol on trash trucks and buses and trains. They are ashamed not to be involved over there. What is wrong with us here? We need to take them by example. I'm going to share with you the Memory Cafe. They're going to just cue this up here. And this is a brilliant support group, which is a social support group for people with early memory loss and their care partners, so they can get together and talk about life, not the disease. The disease will come up, but the focus is about life. So we'll see if we can get it queued up here.
Go for the camaraderie.
Okay.
And this group brings that back.
Annie.
Oh, that's the very end.
And then there was Annie.
Welcome to the Memory Cafe, where memories are in this moment.
It's a unique support group because it's for both the person with Alzheimer's and their care partner.
You go for the camaraderie, and this group brings that back.
Annie. And then there was Annie. And it sure helps our people with Alzheimer's because they need that laughter.
Well, I like doing that. I'm good at that.
Everybody's laughing and clapping, and now the person who was anxious feels comfortable.
It gives you a chance to just talk. Just release what's bothering you.
It originated in England, and 2 years ago, Lori LeBay started one of the first memory cafes in the U.S. Now there's close to 100 all over the country.
You know, cheer you up when you come in. They make you feel welcome.
And it's so popular in Roseville, Arthur's Memory Cafe has 2 groups.
I've always been kind of a know-it-all. So yeah, it's hard for me. But it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks we'll have been married 50 years.
I was probably in denial for almost a year. Then I realized that, that's the hand we've been dealt, and unlike poker, you can't call for new cards.
I meet other people who have problems like I have.
How does that help?
That I'm not the only one that's ill.
She seems comfortable and happy.
We will have had 63 years since we signed a contract.
Wow. It's a special bond that makes meetings memorable.
Remember the dog last time?
Yes.
We come here, we laugh, but we also learn.
It's my chance to recharge my batteries because I'll tell you, after a couple of weeks they start to run low.
You learn how other people cope, and you pick up tips.
And to get rid of the embarrassment. None of us should feel embarrassed because we got ill.
I have a goal myself to just take care of my wife in whatever step she's at.
And it just makes it worthwhile to bring her here and show her off, right, baby?
And Bill is taking care of his mom, but Bill is legally blind, so they kind of care for each other in a lot of fashions.
Yeah, we kind of look after each other.
There's
no cost to the participants here, because Arthur's is paying for all of the treats and the coffee in the room, and for Lori's time as well.
We don't have to worry about somebody kind of looking at people with Alzheimer's kind of down at them, because we're all in the same boat, and so we enjoy just coming together.
There's no cure for Alzheimer's, but thanks to support groups like Arthur's Memory Cafe, there is hope.
They literally say, this is my lifeline. I don't know what I would do without this group.
For Lori, it's her passion to help others. Her mother has had dementia for more than 30 years.
I don't look at these as meetings. I don't look at them as a support group. I look at them as a gathering of friends.
Yes, we've become a family.
Amen. We're the church.
She has international renown in the world of Alzheimer's.
Have a good weekend, huh?
Oh, thank you. Lovely.
Yeah.
John Gross, 5 Eyewitness News.
They're an incredible way to support individuals, and it's absolutely a fabulous, probably one of the best things that I get to do is to help people through this process. Sometimes we meet for 2 hours and we just laugh. There's not really an agenda. It's about letting them feel like they belong again, which we all deserve. The Purple Angel Project, again, is something that Norms McNamara from the UK started. This symbol is the new global symbol for dementia. We want this to be as well known as the pink ribbon is for breast cancer. You see, it's time to become dementia friendly. And we're going to have Jan up here in just a minute talking a little bit about their group in Watertown. I do want you to remember 3 things, because in life, one of the things that I pulled back as I struggled to deal with this disease with my own mom was, what's life really about? And what do I want to focus on? And what I found was that there were 3 things that basically everybody retains. It's the things that brings us tears, the things that makes us scared, and the joyful moments. And the tears are usually over what we project we've lost. The fear is about what we worry is to come. And the joy is right before us. And we miss it because we're over here crying for what we've lost or shaking in our boots over what we think might come down the road. But if we can live in the present moment, we can capture the joy. So what are you going to focus on? You have a choice. Most of us don't want to cry and we don't want to be scared, but we like to laugh. So let's make a conscious decision to be focused in the present and find the joy. But in order to do that, when it comes to dementia, there are a couple of things that we have to do. We have to really understand the disease. We have to appreciate it. And probably the most difficult thing to do is accept it. Because so many times we're trying to fight it and remove it, and it's not going away. And that's for the person that is diagnosed as well as those we care for. We have to learn to gather knowledge and support. And we have to learn to share it. We have to shift our mindsets and our expectations. And yes, sometimes our routines, we fight our routines. We don't want them changed. But how many times have you changed a routine because of this clash, and then you go, oh, why didn't I do that a long time ago? But we fight change. You see, we have to look for the fear triggers, not only for the person diagnosed, but for ourselves. Because once we put on our little investigative hat and identify those things, then we can make changes and we can remove them. You see, people with dementia use the same equation as all of us for our reactions. It's our current attitude plus our past experiences that create our perceptions, and our perceptions trigger our reactions. And when we don't like those reactions, we call them behaviors. We do it with our kids, we do it with everybody. We do it with our spouses, we do it with people with dementia. And we have control over so much more than we know. So we can remove the stigmas and we can build community. We can shift people from crisis to comfort by being there. Our memory chip is, I'm not going to go into right now, but is at our table, and it's a free tool that can help you shift from being task-focused to being person-centered, focusing on, are they safe, are they happy, are they pain-free? It's truly time to come together. Alzheimer's Speaks has all kinds of resources for you. We've got a radio show we've been doing for 3 years that is, we interview all kinds of people all over the world, and they're all recorded. They're there for you. We've got a blog. We have the dementia chats, the YouTube, the resource directory. If you're not in it, we want you in it. There's no cost. The memory cafes, and of course then the just the resources in general. I want to, and I'm not going to show the last video, guys, because I want to get Jan up here on time, but we really do have a choice here. And how are we going to frame this? Is disease and illness going to be a gift or a disaster? What do you want it to be? Don't stop living life because of disease. Don't lose your relationships for that. It doesn't deserve that. People want to be connected. And they have a right to live purpose-filled lives, and you will be amazed at the lessons you will learn. How you will have to simplify things, how you will appreciate things at a level you didn't know. I did not know there were so many levels of unconditional love, and the lessons my mom has taught me over 30 years, I could talk for days on. So look for the joy, look for the empowerment, embrace everyone around you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close and bring up Jan. And Jan Zimmerman is the administrator and the director of nursing at Heritage Homes down in Watertown. And Jan was just a joy to work with when we rolled out the first dementia-friendly community in the U.S. Again, a concept that came from the UK, a grassroots model that has just ignited things beyond belief in terms of what's going on. They also rolled out one of the memory cafes, and they had, I think, 15, 16 people show up for the very first meeting. One man didn't even know if he had dementia. And I thought, what a brave soul. And he said, it doesn't make any difference. I need support, and I'd like to be here. So Jan, why don't you come on up and tell people a little bit more about what you're up to.
The news story needs to be about hope, meaning, and connection. That really resounded with me. There's such a stigma still attached to dementia that should not be there. And we can make a difference to remove it. Since I started at Heritage Homes, and we're almost at our 4-year mark, every year we have done some type of community workshop around dementia and educating the community, because it is about education. We need to have everybody become aware of what dementia is, what it isn't, and how we can make a difference as a community, as individuals. Well, as we decided what we were going to do for last year's, Mike very kindly said, go big this year. We've got Lori LeBay. We want you to have her come. Okay. Then I heard her speak, and I went, okay, this is good. Then she and I got together, and we started talking about what this 2-3 hour workshop was going to focus on. How can you not be inspired by that? And as we were talking, I said, you know, I really wish we could focus on businesses and get the community involved. And she says, okay, we'll do it. Okay. So we started looking around and deciding, really, this is what we needed to do. The UK has been doing it for a while. There's nothing going on in the United States that's being advertised. And we're United States. We cannot be behind on this. So we went forward with it. And as we started connecting with people, connecting with businesses, we found out there really is a hunger for the education and the support out there. Last October, we had our first coalition meeting, and we had over 20 people at our first one. And one of the first things they decided to do was to create our vision statement. And it is, we believe that people with dementia have a right to quality of life and to remain independent and safe in their local community. We believe that people with dementia have the right to live well, engage in, and contribute to their local communities, and we will raise awareness about dementia. We now have over 40 people on our list for the coalition, and every month we have between 20 and 30 people there. They're all volunteers, they're all passionate, and we're making a difference. Our number one goal is education, and we are going out to all the different types of businesses we have: retail, banking, food services, hospitals, clinics, public services, emergency services, and we are offering the training that they are looking for. We train one person, have them become aware about what dementia is. And what do? They take that home and they talk about it during the supper time. Now, we have 3, 4, 5 people who have heard a little bit more and maybe have become more interested in it. And soon, this will grow and go across the country. That's our goal. During one of the interviews that I had, somebody said, well, why Watertown? That's a small community. And it kind of threw me, because I never thought about Watertown as being a small community, but it kind of is compared to Madison and Milwaukee. And the best answer I could give him was, why not? It has to start somewhere. It has to start with someone. And we have chosen not to sit by idly, talk about it. We are going to do something about it. And therefore, we are going forward with this and pushing it not only through our community, but also through the nation. When we first did this, I don't know, though Lori has said she had the idea, I had no idea the way it was going to take off. I was praying that maybe we'd have 5 people showing up and be interested in it. I was praying it was going to last more than 3 months, and it is going stronger and stronger. We have got 9 businesses who have earned the Purple Angels to put into their businesses, and I have 15 now wanting the training, and we just need to get the training to them. Last week, we went to the Kalahari Resort. I don't know if any of you have heard that. It's a big water park in Wisconsin Dells. And I went in, we gave them why we felt that they should become dementia aware and dementia friendly. And I was sure I was going to hear, thank you very much. We'll take it under consideration. We'll talk to you later. She looked at me and she says, okay, how are we going to do this training? We have to provide it to everybody, and we have different departments. How are we going to do that? Oh, and by the way, we have facilities in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and we also want them trained. This is a huge company. Can you imagine the number of people we are going to affect with this? So God has taken our little plan, our 3-hour workshop, and has really blessed it. We had the Wisconsin State Journal come to do an article for our opening. We prayed we weren't going to be on the second or third page from the end because nobody reads those pages. Front, back, maybe they would. We were on the front cover of that. Is that not a blessing there? It went on the AP and it went nationwide. I have been talking to people from one coast to the other. I have been talking to different state representatives, different state governments. All of them want to know what they can do to go forward with this as well. So as we go forward, all we can do is ask for your prayers, share our hope, and help us educate the world that dementia is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that you need to hide and isolate from. Lori did say that we have a memory cafe. That started in October as well. Again, we were hoping that maybe more than 3 or 4 people would show up, and we had 15 people there that day. One of the couple there was a mother and daughter. And the mother is one of our residents at Heritage Homes. She rarely talks. When they were going around saying, would you please introduce yourself and tell you what makes you happy, she was the first person they turned to. So I sat there and went, okay. I wonder how long before they move on to somebody else because she's not going to speak. In a minute, I was in tears. She was talking about how much her daughter meant to her, how much being able to get together like this meant to her, and how great it was knowing that somebody cared about her. And this is a woman, as I said, who we hardly got any words out of while she's with us. It's these moments that let us know that what we are doing is really important. It's needed, and we're going to do everything that we can to help promote it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Kurt, Lori, and Jan. We're going to bring the 3 of them back up here for a question and answer time. We have several of our administrators from the facility. We have several of our facility administrators who are going to be going around with handheld mics to answer your questions. So if you have a question that you would like to address to either Jan or Pastor Kurt or Lori, please raise your hand. They'll bring a microphone to you.
Somebody out there's got to have a question. Come on. There's one back over here.
I think it was about 9 months ago in the New Yorker magazine, there was a very long feature article about a household somewhere in the United States that was being looked at by people interested in the topic of Alzheimer's and dementia. And this place apparently is a cutting-edge household for people with dementia, how they approach it and how they care for the residents there. Are you familiar at all with this?
It could be the greenhouse with the Eden Alternative with Bill Thomas. And if any of you are interested in learning more about him, he's actually coming to the Twin Cities this Friday for, I think it's called, it's at Orchestra Hall, and I think it's called Second Wind Tours, and it's about that next stage of life. But the Eden Alternatives, he's been on this mission since the 70s in terms of changing what nursing homes look like and feel. But there are a lot of different communities out there all trying to make a name in dementia care and doing things differently. So I don't think any of us know the exact article you were referring to, though, but my guess is it could be Bill Thomas. Dr. Bill Thomas with the Eden Alternative, or Changing Aging, he's also with too.
Any other questions for any of our presenters?
One at back corner over here, and then one over here too.
I guess I'm a nurse in the Appleton area, and it's not uncommon for us to care for patients who have fallen or broken a hip or the like that have Alzheimer's or dementia of some degree. And I'm wondering if there's any resources available for hospital staff or nursing staff, or resources that family can have to give to hospital or medical staff to help us calm them, because it's already confusing to come into an unusual setting. And I've recently taken care of 2 patients who really struggled, and I used a lot of touch and calm voice and keeping doors closed to prevent outside noise in, but I'm wondering if there's resources available to help.
Peter, do you want to take it? I think there's a lot of different training out there. I think part of the whole dementia-friendly movement is really to get into the hospitals, the clinics, the emergency workers, because we all think they know how to deal with this, but they don't. And one of the most difficult things is when somebody goes into the hospital, anytime they leave their environment, it can set them back in the disease significantly, and they may never regain when they come out of the hospital where they're at. So I think it's great that you're trying to reduce the noise. Lighting can be an issue, glares coming in through the window. Sometimes a person can be facing this way, and let's say the window's over here. And just by closing the blinds can make a huge difference, because they can feel like there's a presence, even though it's just a glare from the light, and then they'll turn, and when they're head on with the light, they don't feel that there's this presence. But then they turn back this way and they feel like something's over there. So just by shutting those blinds can kind of get rid of that paranoia. Music can be really powerful depending on what they like, or maybe it's a guy who likes to listen to sports games and just have that on in the background. Approach is really important in terms of approaching somebody eye level and head on, and go ahead and touch them. Let them know that you're there and that you're a friend, and smile. So many times we approach people and we're just so in a mode of doing a task, and we're really not engaging them. And so just a smile is so powerful. 75% of our communication is nonverbal, and we have to really remember that. So I think there's a lot more training that we'd love to see in the hospitals in Florida. There's actually a wristband program that Gary LeBlanc has pulled together, and upon admission, people are getting a purple angel on their identification bracelet, and there's a symbol being put outside a door that doesn't say dementia. It's just the symbol, so people know walking in that maybe, just maybe, the person they're talking to isn't going to have all the answers or isn't going to be able to comprehend. So great question. Love to talk further on that.
We are working with our hospitals. Things off, we are working with our hospitals to do just that. We are developing the purple wristbands to let people know that the person may have some confusion going on. We are getting symbols to go outside the door so that as you go in, you're aware that, the processing status may be a little bit slower so that you can approach them and interact with them in a little different manner. We are developing a worksheet for family or caregivers to fill out so that when they go to the hospital, they can give them some specifics about the person, what can agitate them and what calms them. We are going to be doing training with all the different departments because it doesn't matter if you're in lab, if you're in x-ray, if you're a receptionist, if you're dining, if you're housekeeping, nursing staff, ER, you will come in contact with somebody with dementia, confusion, and everybody needs to know how to work with them and make sure that they're as safe and feel as comfortable as possible.
I think there's a question over here.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was informative and interesting. One can understand the spiritual motivation of those who are volunteering to lead and to work in this area. My question now is, in setting up the different groups, is the organization structured in such a way that those who are leading in this area can also make use of religious or spiritual materials from an educational point of view, or is there a government tie-in that would kind of limit what could be done spiritually with this type of program as it's being carried out and as it's being projected?
Do you want to take that?
I think one of the things that we should remember is sometimes there's a resistance in trying to train volunteers to meet the spiritual component. But this is where churches, individual churches, really have an opportunity to either as clergy or training members to meet these needs. And so while I think, for instance, I'm on a distribution list for Clergy Against Alzheimer's, and that point just came up in an email. A pastor expressed a frustration that he offered to train volunteers to work with dementia and to bring in, or to train the volunteers to meet spiritual needs. And I'm thinking, well, really, that's the church's responsibility. And so this is what we need to understand, is that we can often come in and with our volunteers share the gospel. I found again and again that people are professionals as well as individuals. They really want to help people find peace. The video that I showed was a great example of an individual recognizing this Christian woman, and as she put it, her old church songs brought her to a point of peace and safety. If we can tap into that, we can do that. And so it's a tremendous opportunity to get congregations and individuals involved in the whole thing. I think this isn't just a matter of professionals, it's a matter of everybody getting involved. And we're all going to be better off for that.
I'd like to add to that. With the Memory Cafe, the concept came from the UK. Most of their meetings are in the basement of the Baptist churches. Over here in the US, we don't have any set religion that has stepped up to the plate that says we're going to go all over and do this. They have the Rotary clubs actually helping fund it. So here it's really a grassroots effort, and people with passion are saying, hey, do you want to help? And that's kind of how we're getting together. So subtly, what is happening, like with our group, we've got 3 now in Roseville, we start out with what we call bummers and blessings. And so it's very subtle, but what didn't go so right in the first, in the last 2 weeks since we got together, and what are you really grateful for? And we really let the groups decide what is it their focus is. The groups are structured to be fluid, to meet community need, because every community is different. And even though we have 3 groups that all meet in the same location, we have 3 different needs within that group. But I think it's prime to be able to lift that spirituality. There's a company called Coro Health that actually has scriptures and hymns that can be bought, and it's actually an app that can go on the phone now too. They do what's called music prescriptions, and that resonates so deeply with so many. So great question.
To let people know that we will be coming out in fall. We will be providing education to our religious community, not only for the pastors, but also for parish nursing, so that we can give them some tools so that they can go back to their congregations and help those who need support and help them get the support that they need.
To this point, too, one thing, too, is 70% of the people with dementia are living in homes, cared for by loved ones. And so we often think of this as an institutional thing or facility thing. It isn't. It's largely right there in your community.
I'm going to add one thing really quick on this, because I think it's really important. A lot of people that I talk to through my blog, and this is people all over the world, say, I stopped going to church because they don't understand. They look at me funny the way I dress because or that I fidget a little and stuff. And so we don't want that to happen. And you can all help that by being educated and being more compassionate and understanding in that. So now you can have your question there. He's holding the mic.
I have two questions. Do you want them both at the same time or one at a time?
Go ahead, both.
Okay. My mother's in a facility, and when I go to see her, most of the time she's always sitting in the dark. Is there a reason for that, and what should I be doing about that? Should I open the blinds, turn on the lights, or just leave her in her comfort of darkness? And the other thing that happens more and more often now, she is hallucinating a lot, and sometimes she actually bolts out of the facility, and staff cannot handle her. And a lot of times, either myself or my sister are asked to come in there and try and calm her down and get her back. And any suggestions on how we should address that?
It's a care question.
That one's mine, they said. It's very difficult to answer about the darkness. It might be a way of staff not wanting to deal with her, but it also may be a preference of hers. We had one individual that when she was out amongst a number of people or it was very bright, she got very agitated and very scared. So she would go to her room, she'd sit in her rocker, and she wanted it dark. That calmed her. So it could be either way, because I don't know, I can't answer to that. With hallucinations, that is a very common part with Alzheimer's and some of the other dementias. What we do in our facility is, what are the hallucinations? Is it they have a friend that they're talking to, so as they walk around they're talking to their friend who gives them comfort? We don't do anything about that. Now, are they seeing snakes and men coming in and they're not feeling safe? Then we may look to see if there are some kind of a psychotropic medications to help reduce those hallucinations. So we need to look at what kind of quality of life are these hallucinations giving them? Why she's bolting, really listening to what she is saying before they leave can give you a clue to, are they going to take care of somebody? We have a number of people that they have a job to do, so they're going to go do that job, whether it's to be at home when the children come home from school, whether they're going to a job. They've got a task, they're going to do it. Others are afraid, and they want to escape. And so you kind of need to listen and see if you can get into the world to understand what the reason is that they're leaving. If you can understand that, you can then start putting some types of intervention in place.
I'm going to just add, with the darkness, again, what calmed her down? What, growing up, what did you see? What did your mom like? Would be one of the things I'd ask. It could easily be that, she's here, she's quiet, she's not disrupting everybody, and staff might not know exactly how to deal with her, and trying to keep her safe. But it might be, like Jan said, of her own choosing. That's where she feels comfortable and where she feels grounded. Our eyesight changes as we get older, too, and so bright light sometimes hurt people's eyes, and it can glare and be really confusing in terms of what they see. There's a video, oh gosh, I'll see if I can find it and put it on my blog here yet tonight, that was brilliant, and it talks about what somebody with the disease sees. And when you see the distortion, you kind of go, holy cow. No wonder they're scared, no wonder they're acting out. And then, medications, we try to use those last. Again, use that equation. What is kind of their past experience and their current attitude? What's that triggering for their perception? And put that detective hat on. Sometimes it could be a person that triggers them acting out. My mom used to act out when she would go into the shower, and she always loved water and taking a bath or taking a shower. And then what I found out was that even though she was a heavy woman, as we age, we lose our fat pads. And so when she would go into the shower and they would turn that on, that actually hurt her body. And so by changing to a rain shower head and one that's handheld and starting at her feet and working up, that got rid of all of that. So it really is about being a detective and looking deeper, because there's typically always a trigger. It could be even the decoration of where they're at. Norms McNamara from the UK talked about going into a store one time, and there was a floral pattern in the carpet, and he saw snakes coming up at him, and he was scared to death. And it was just the carpeting. So, and to help not wander, sometimes facilities and communities will put like dark tile in front of an elevator or a door because they think it's a hole and they won't go there. The color changes, so there's different things that can be done to kind of help that. Lock doors, even just putting a lock up high, they won't see it, or putting a baby handle on a round knob. They can't always be able to maneuver that. So different things can be done.
We use a stanchion in front of our door when we have somebody who has decided that they are going to leave. Because most people, whether you're at a theater, a museum, whatever, you see that stanchion, you don't go past that point. So we just put it in front, and they'll go up to it, turn, and go someplace else. So little things.
Okay.
Then there's one back there, too.
I have quite a few questions and comments, but I just want to thank you. And to me, I can see this being as big as like hospice has gotten to be, where everybody is trained, and you have some volunteers that can help, especially with respite care, because I was surprised that many people are in their home. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the facilities. Would really be nice to see them have a purple angel on their door, because I think there's a wide range of facilities that say they're special Alzheimer units. And so it would be nice to know where they stand on really being an Alzheimer unit.
We have a purple angel on ours.
Okay, everything that we have heard this afternoon, I think are excellent for the dealing with people that have dementia, or if we have dementia. Right at the moment, I don't think I do, but 5 years from now, what is being done as far as resources to try and find a cure, anything, or a prevention? Could you discuss a little bit about what do you see coming in the future to help us? Because it sounds like we're all going to have dementia in the future.
I comes to that, right now there's a lot of research being done, but it's a pimple compared to other diseases. The NFL put up more money than we have nationally for funding, for research, for their players, for compensation because of concussion. So we are extremely underfunded. They are doing everything from nasal sprays that break through the blood-brain barrier to, I don't know if you heard about sniffing peanut butter on one nostril, and if you can smell it, you're okay. I mean, it's kind of bizarre, all of the stuff that's occurring. But most of the trials that are happening are really very small trials. It might be 30 people, And so we need funding desperately. The Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation does a lot that's kind of holistic, that deals more with food and exercise and meditation. And you're seeing more and more of that up. But I think one of the biggest things that is finally coming to the plate is the social interaction. They're really seeing the impact of how that can help people engage. It's kind of like, do I eat bacon or don't I eat bacon? When we were going through that mode, they really just don't have a clue. Every day you can see several different articles that are going to tell you something different, but they really don't know what is causing this, where it's coming from. It's been around for over 100 years, but it's a baby disease. And with the boomer push, that's going to change. And with all of you raising the voice and talking to Congress and talking with your friends and families, we're going to change that.
One of the things, too, that has come out is there is a blood test now that can determine people who might be more predisposed to the disease. That's a breakthrough for research because in the past, all the drug trials they've been using are in people that exhibit signs of dementia. Well, that means the disease has been active many times for 10 years. And now you're trying to reverse or stop this thing going forward. Now, if we've now got a good test that can identify people who are more likely to have dementia, we can actually take drugs that have been tried and tested, didn't reverse it or stop it in later stages, but now we can apply it to new things. And so there's some hope that some of those drugs might in turn be effective. But a lot of research has to be done. And it's very challenging because right now we don't diagnose Alzheimer's, or recently we don't diagnose Alzheimer's until we see the symptoms showing up, which is the dementia. And most people would agree we're probably too late by then.
And unfortunately, because of the stigma, healthcare providers are not diagnosing as early as they should. They don't want to label the person. Plus, they don't want to give them the bad news that they think that they may have dementia. So that's causing a problem. Wisconsin has developed or is working on the Wisconsin Restructuring Program for Dementia. And one of the big pushes in there, besides the education, is that we get more funding for research. The earlier that a person is diagnosed, the more things that they can put into place and practice that while it will not stop dementia, it can greatly slow it down. We had one individual who was diagnosed early. She has done a lot of brain games. She's changed her diet. She has taken some of the medications that we have. And for the last 8 years, she has been pretty stable with where she's at. And she's one of our best advocates in the state of Wisconsin.
I'd like to add to that, to both their comments. One, with the blood test, people ask me all the time, Lori, are you going to take the test because your mom had the disease? Do you want to know? And I've talked to a lot of doctors about this, and their answer to me is, I wouldn't take the test if it was me. And the reason is that they say it like this, we all pretty much have the cancer gene in us, but we don't know if it's going to mutate. And so you could have that gene in you, but is it going to take? I have a very close friend, Dr. Dale Anderson,
who has the gene. But so, he's, 75, 80 years old? No signs of it. But if someone gets diagnosed, that could be really scary. If the insurance companies get a hold of that, what does that mean to your insurance? People are worried about everything from long-term to health insurance to are they still going to be able to drive? So a lot of those things haven't been addressed. And doctors do need to do a better job when they diagnose versus, you've got dementia, see you in 9 months, here's the Alzheimer's Association. And they're just devastated because they don't know what that means. In Minnesota, the first contact now from the Alzheimer's Association, if they've got permission from the clinic they're working with, and have agreed to this, their very first contact from the Alzheimer's Association is actually a person who's already diagnosed. And so it gives them hope that somebody really understands what it is they're going through. So, with this disease and where we are at, it is unlimited what we can do. The creativity that can come about to help people and to bless them and give them purpose in their lives and show support. Along with research, we need caregiver support today, and anybody dealing with dementia will tell you that over and over. I really don't care if there's a cure because I need help now. Because even if they find a cure, it's 15, 20 years down the road.
In connection with the frame that you showed with pity or celebrate as your choices, dementia could serve as an opportunity to lift high Christ's name. For example, if a congregation could be known in the community as being the church that cares for people with dementia and their caregivers, and that church could have a wonderful niche in the community for entering and pointing people to Christ. So let's say if I'm a church leader and I would like my congregation to unite around this vision for outreach, before I would go to a voters meeting and just raise my hand and then propose this, I'd want to do some groundwork preparing, thinking ahead what roadblocks or what would that all include if my congregation were to support this vision? Like what training would I need to provide for the youth group before they'd be on a list for support for giving caregivers respite from caring for the family member with dementia? It would just be one example. So what would be all the practical things I'd want to look at for getting my congregation to want to be working at being identified in the community as the congregation that really cares for people with dementia and their caregivers?
I think one of the things is you need a core group of excited people. If you get a core group of excited people, you can do an awful lot. If you throw the idea out there and you hear silence, you just don't have it. This is not something that a pastor can simply take on as another job. It needs the support of some folks. And as you mentioned, Jan, we're seeking to work especially with congregations that have parish nurses because we think that's an ideal setting to put this in place. I'd say before you'd start to try to have a program adopted by your congregation, you meet with that core group and you start to explore some of the initial training. And it isn't difficult, other than the fact that we have to look for cues other than verbal when we're talking and communicating. We start looking at that. But the other thing, too, is rather than caring for the folks with dementia, maybe the easier entry point is to care for the support providers, those primary caregivers. And there you don't need a lot of training. It might be just a matter of getting some kids to mow the lawn so that Mrs. Jones doesn't have to be worried about that. There's a place to start. Someone who can come in and when Mr. Jones is napping, give Mrs. Jones a chance to nap at the same time. And just watch him while he's sleeping so she can relax and doesn't know that he's going to go out the door. So there's a lot of entry points that you can start without a tremendous amount of training. And then as people show an aptitude and a sense of working with people with dementia, a lot of that is going to come. I think, again, we're also looking at how we can structure programs and take a look at how a congregation can identify all the families that have caregiving, that are caregiving families, and then find ways of supporting that and move from there.
When we went into businesses and when we first started this, we took 150 flyers and we went door to door, all the businesses in Watertown. One of the first things I said to the person that I talked to was, do you know anyone who has dementia? The number of people that said yes was over 99%. I think I had 3 people who said, no, not really. As soon as you ask them that starts putting it on a personal level. They start seeing what their responsibility as a community member is, that ignites their passion and how they can help others.
We've got time for one more quick question.
Pastor, my question is for you. My husband is also a pastor, and he lost his grandfather last year to Alzheimer's. And you mentioned clergy against Alzheimer's, and I think that that would be something that he would find really beneficial. He visits a lot of his shut-ins have Alzheimer's or dementia, and he gets a lot of hope from them because, like the video showed, a lot of times what they respond to are the songs that they remember or the Lord's Prayer or something very simple in that, and so that gives him hope himself. So how would he go about getting into contact with the clergy against Alzheimer's?
You and I can talk right after, and I'll get you to the website.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Again, one of the things too with long-term, with Alzheimer's especially, you lose short-term memory. So if you can attach and connect with those long-term memories, which are often those songs and Bible lessons and the Lord's Prayer, you tap into and bring peace. You can see it in people's eyes right away. And it's just a tremendous thing to be able to do.
I'd like to just add real quick, Us Against Alzheimer's is a large organization, and that's part of what Pastor Kurt is involved in, and they do a great job connecting with our government and legislation as well, and they've been doing a lot of offshoots from Women Against Alzheimer's in different categories, so another great resource. But I just want to thank you all for what a great conversation.
Thank you.